Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 16 of the Memorial Memo KSR's Kentucky Women's Basketball Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Friends of Cole. Katie, we have, per usual, a lot to dig into. We have a very big game coming up, a big stretch coming up, and unfortunately a loss we have to recap, but let's not try to dwell on that for forever. But Katie, before we get into any of it, just how are you?
Feeling good. I mean, yesterday I got the day off because snow day and stuff, so feeling good today.
You know, of course, I think it's pretty well known now that we're both students here at UK, and UK is very bad about closing when the weather's bad. There was, last year with, the tornadoes and whatnot. There was that video that went viral of that poor girl trying to walk to class, and she literally gets blown over backwards, and UK doesn't close then. But, Katie, I feel like the snow, yes, there was snow, but I don't feel like the roads were that bad. I don't feel like a ton was too bad, but regardless, I'm not going to complain about a day off from classes, and I know you aren't either.
No, definitely
Katie,
not.
just kind of rolling into things, per usual, some ranking stuff to start. Finally, Katie, Kentucky, a top 10 team in the AP poll. Of course, now with the loss to Ole Miss, we'll see if that sticks. Of course, a win against Texas can really do some numbers for you there. But, number 8 in the AP poll, it's not surprising because, there were so many teams kind of above Kentucky that did lose. Literally, I think it was literally 8, 9, and 10, and then the number 12 team, because Kentucky was 11, they beat TCU, who was number 9, Kansas State, and then they lost by 30 in their game, so against Oklahoma State. So no surprise, Kentucky jumped into the top 10, but Katie, right in the mix with the best teams in the country. It's just after the Ole Miss loss, I don't know if Kentucky will still be a top 10 team come Monday.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think that Ole Miss is bad by any means, but I don't think that Kentucky will stay in single digits. Maybe they'll drop to number 10. I think that might be the ceiling for next week. But like you said, if the Texas win comes out of it, then Kentucky will probably stay in the top 10. But yeah, I think number 8 is great. I think that's where they deserve to be. But of course, when you're ranked that high, you're expected to win. And when you don't do what you're supposed to do, then you're gonna drop. So I think that's what's gonna happen next week, but we'll see.
I don't even know if I would be too terribly shocked. If Kentucky were to beat Texas tomorrow, could they even move up despite the Ole Miss loss? And it's just a matter of I don't know if they would, but I do think it's something you could ponder because you're gonna be ranked higher than Texas. Texas would fall. Texas is number 3. So if they come into here and lose, Texas is probably going to be sitting at probably 6, 7, and then you move up or 7, 8, maybe you move up to 6, 7. But it's still something interesting. Of course, beating Texas is a tall task, but it is something I think worthy to think about. If Kentucky were to pull this off, could they move up? Could they stay in the same place? And, of course, again, you lose to Ole Miss. Do you still move down? I think it would be interesting. Of course, the most important rankings we're going to talk about are the net rankings, Katie, because that's what the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee, they look at that. That's kind of their main thing. Kentucky is down to number 20 in the net. They were previously at number 17. It's not shocking Kentucky falls down in the net after they, lose those games. But, sitting there, 8 of the top 20 teams in the SEC, 8 of the top 20 teams in the net, are SEC teams, Katie. It just goes to show, this is a really good conference, and, say what you will about net rankings in the SEC and everything, but Kentucky, it's just it's a tough life out here, and it's still, I think it says a lot to be a top 25 team, a quad 1, when teams play you, it's a quad 1 game whenever they play against you.
Yeah, it's definitely something to look at. And I think that something that might help Kentucky outcome next week is Ole Miss is actually ranked above Kentucky in the net rankings. They're at number 13. So for them to be 7 spots higher than Kentucky, I think is interesting, especially because Ole Miss was the favorite going into that game. So hopefully when it comes time for the voters to decide where Kentucky is going to be next week, they'll kind of take that into consideration and realize, well, even though Ole Miss doesn't look that great like on paper, I guess, or with their record or whatever, they're sixth in the SEC. They're 13th in the net, so they're clearly a pretty good team.
Well, and it's also one of those things, like, you look at their losses, like, they lost to Texas. They lost to Texas A&M on the road, which that's not a great loss, but at least it's, we're not the only ones, right? They lost to USC, UConn. Like, they have a lot of really good losses. Like you look at their record, like, they lost to Alabama, which is not great, but that's still a top 25 team you lost to. Like, you're not losing to, again, other than Texas A&M. It's not like they're losing to bad teams. They have, yes, maybe not the best record in the world, but they have some really, really good wins. I also think it's worthy to note, like, the preseason expectations for Ole Miss were really high, and they're proving that. Beating a top 10 team in Kentucky, at home, kind of not handling business, Katie, but winning games that they probably, like, it's not crazy that they beat Kentucky at home. Like, Ole Miss is, I don't want to say sneaky good, but Ole Miss, like this is kind of what I thought after the game, where Ole Miss, like, that wasn't a bad loss on paper, and we're gonna go into it more when we actually recap Ole Miss. But Ole Miss, that wasn't a bad loss on paper. It was just bad how Kentucky lost. But it goes to say, like, it's really big that you beat Oklahoma because of the loss to Ole Miss.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that especially having those 2 wins last week was so huge because we expected Kentucky to go, 1-1, maybe 0-2 even. Like, we never knew how it was going to turn out. So for them to go 2-0 that week and then drop 1 to Ole Miss, I don't think is detrimental to the season at all. I mean, we're still 19-3, so it's pretty good.
For sure. And then, of course, ESPN bracketology, Charlie Kareem here on the women's side doing the bracketology for ESPN. Kentucky's a 4 seed, still a 4 seed, which really what that means, Katie, even after the loss to Ole Miss, he's still pretty high on Kentucky. And basically, and I think this is really what Kentucky, like, if you ask Kenny Brooks, he's just going to be like, we're playing to win every game. But really, what is Kentucky playing for at this point in the season, Katie? You want to get a double bye in the SEC tournament, so you want to be a top 4 seed in the SEC tournament. But you really, really want to be a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Because the thing about the women's tournament, Katie, those top 16 seeds, you host the first 2 rounds. The round of 64 and the round of 32 are at your gym in front of your fans. Like, I don't even know if it's technically a neutral site. I don't know if they even list those as technically a neutral site or if it literally is just listed as a home game. Like, Kentucky, if they're a top 4 seed, that's Memorial Coliseum. They get 2 NCAA tournament games. Like, of course, ESPN bracketology is not final, but Katie, it's really good to see even after a loss like that on the road to Ole Miss. It's like you said again. It's not. Like you said, it's not super detrimental, but it also goes to show, Katie, like, Kentucky has a good resume so far, and even then, like, can still host the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, I'm looking at the mock bracket right now, and the way that ESPN has it is Kentucky would play UTSA in the first round in Lexington, and then they would play the winner of Michigan State and James Madison, also in Lexington, and then after that they could play Mississippi State again or Notre Dame. Of course, those would not be in Lexington, but I think it's just interesting the way that this bracket has kind of played out. And if this draw is correct, I mean, obviously that's kind of a slim chance that this is going to be exactly right. But I would say it's a pretty good draw. I think that Kentucky could probably beat Notre Dame. It's just a matter of, who's on and who's off. But, I mean, if you stay as a 4 seed, like ESPN says that you're going to be, then I think that you have a pretty good chance of making a run.
Well, I think my only worry with that is I'm pretty sure because Notre Dame they'd be a 1 seed, right? They'd be the 1 seed, yeah. So I think the whole region becomes Notre Dame's. Like, if I'm not wrong, Katie, that whole region would be in South Bend.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they would host.
So I think I could be wrong. I don't know if I'm going to be honest, guys. Kentucky hasn't gone to the Sweet 16 in so long. I can't remember. But I don't know if those are neutral games or not when you get past the...
I don't think it's neutral until the Final Four.
Maybe not.
I don't know. For
There's
sure,
no way the Elite Eight. Who knows? Maybe we'll figure out this year whenever Kentucky wins the national title, right? But it's just one of those things. Like, I mean, Notre Dame. Well, when you're in the NCAA tournament, Katie, it's one of those things you have to play somebody. If you're, like, you have to beat somebody if you're going to win the national title. Like, if you're going to make a run, and not having to face a 1 seed till the Sweet 16, like, it's not bad. Like, I'll take that. I'll definitely take that. But it's mainly for me getting to the Sweet 16 and hosting those first 2 rounds. Don't want to talk about it, but we have to. Ole Miss happened. It was ugly. Well, actually, for a while, the thing with Ole Miss is that it looked like it was good for a while. Kentucky led for over 27 minutes of that game and only trailed for 10. Like, that was until midway through the third quarter, it was kind of a good game. Now, don't get me wrong, like, it was ugly in the sense that Ole Miss, they executed their game plan really well, and like their defense, held Kentucky to 57, right? Like, they mucked it up. Played really solid defense. But, I mean, Katie, the story with this game, there's not a story unless you talk about rebounding. And that, Katie, you may be able to help me. I don't understand, how did Kentucky, I can understand maybe losing on the rebounds. Like, I get, like, Ole Miss, maybe it was their night. They beat you on the boards. They got 3 or 4 more rebounds than you did. But Ole Miss wiped the floor with Kentucky as far as rebounds go. I mean, 54 rebounds to 33. And Katie, the even more bewildering stat, 27 offensive rebounds to Kentucky's 4. So again, they had 27 offensive rebounds. Kentucky had 33 total rebounds. I mean, Katie, how, because the whole thing with Kentucky is their size, their length, their athleticism. How do you think Kentucky, got murdered on the glass this bad, Katie?
I think going into this game, the player that I was concerned about, and I think you were also pretty concerned about, was Madison Scott and being able to contain her. And even though she scored 22 points, she was the only Ole Miss player in double digits. It wasn't even her that led the team in rebounds, and it was Star Jacobs, a forward, Kennedy Todd Williams, a guard, and Sierra Theanu, who all 3 had 9 rebounds apiece. And so I think just not being able to contain Theanu and Todd Williams, they're both guards, letting them get 9 rebounds on you when you have players that are 6'3" and above, like 3 on the floor at a time. How do you even let that happen? Truly, but we know from experience that Georgia Amore and Deja can get into the paint and grab a rebound and no one will see them coming because they're so quick. I think that Kentucky just got beat. I don't think that it was a physicality issue. I think it was just letting these quick players get into the paint and grab the rebounds.
I think for the first time this season, I'm just going to straight up just say the effort was not there. I'm looking at Star Jacobs, who she had 9 rebounds, 7 of them were on the offensive end. If you're Amelia Hassett or, one of the guards or literally, I guess, anyone at this point, how are you letting her get 7 offensive rebounds? How tall is Star Jacobs? Do we know? She's a guard. She can't be, she's not over 6 foot tall. And if she is over 6 foot tall, no, she's not. It's just one of those things, Kentucky, your whole starting lineup, besides Georgia and Asia, is 6'3". Your 3, 4, and 5 are all 6'3". Georgia and Asia, yes, they're small, but they have a knack for getting in there and rebounding, like you said. I don't understand. I mean, and I'd have to go back and watch the tape again, but I mean, it's just box outs. They couldn't have been good. The positioning, fighting for a rebound. And I get it, Ole Miss is physical and they wear you down, but Katie, there's a difference in being worn down and again, they rebounded a bit better. They didn't rebound a bit better. They rebounded a whole lot better. They kind of kicked your ass, just, admittedly, Katie.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy because when you think of Kentucky, you think of them being a physical, big team. And that game, it truly did not seem like it. Kentucky looked completely different. And like you said, I mean, the beginning of the game was not bad at all. It was the way that the game finished. And I think I don't know what happened at halftime. We talk about halftime adjustments a lot and how Kenny is able to make halftime adjustments. Well, he didn't really need to because Kentucky was up at the half, so there was no reason to adjust anything because things were going right. So I think that sometimes I think it can become a comfortability thing where maybe Kentucky was comfortable and they were feeling good, and then all of a sudden Ole Miss comes out and they make those halftime adjustments that Kentucky didn't do. And so I don't really know if I think that it was physicality, but I agree with you. I think it was a little bit of an effort issue.
It's just there's just absolutely no reason Kentucky should get beat by anyone by 20 rebounds on the glass when you are as big and long and again athletic as you are. But Katie, we'll highlight a couple of key performers, but there is one who gets her own kind of. We'll talk about her separately because how great she played. But starting with Tiani Key, who I thought was like Kentucky's saving grace, like the reason Kentucky was kind of in the game, the reason they, were kind of competing. 18 points from her, 10 rebounds, 4 blocks and 3 steals in 37 minutes. Like, that's a really good game from Tiani Key.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to notice a trend with Tiani because I'm pretty sure it happened, I think it was Texas A&M where she had 20 points, like her career high. Like her 2 highest scoring games come in losses. Like, I think I'm noticing with Tiani Key, Katie, like, it doesn't matter the situation or the context or what exactly is going on. Tiani Key, it's like she always brings the energy and she's always there to, like, I'm not going to say she's the energy person because I feel like that's Deja. Like, Deja's the most vocal person. I don't know. Maybe Tiani is the energy person and Deja's just the vocal one. But regardless, the point I'm trying to make, Katie, like, I feel like day in and day out, you can kind of count on Tiani Key. Maybe if she doesn't put up the most numbers like she did last, against Ole Miss, she's at least going to bring you the kind of effort you need to see.
Yeah, I almost feel like, and I think I said this a few weeks ago, I think that Tiani Key is probably the most poised player on the team. I think that she can keep her cool and kind of keep everyone on the same page momentum-wise. Even though she's not handling the offense, I think that she does such a great job of just remaining stoic and solid in her stature and just, being mature as a player. I thought it was really interesting that she was 2 of 2 from 3. And I remember talking about this a couple weeks ago too, just waiting for her to develop her 3-point shot because then she will literally be unstoppable. And I think that against Ole Miss, she did exactly what Kenny Brooks expects her to do, score 18 points and get 10 rebounds and do your job perfectly. I just wish that it was a little bit more consistent, but of course you can't have someone making that same kind of performance game in and game out. So I think she did such a great job, but yeah, she definitely was the energy in this game.
And then Georgia Amore, she had 15 and 5. Solid game from her. Not necessarily her best game, but a pretty solid one. But Katie, before we talk about who did good, I want to talk about Amelia Hassett because there's just a problem there. And I don't know if it was a one-game problem or if it's a problem moving forward. But she played 29 minutes and didn't attempt a single shot. Her defense and her rebounding are good, but they're not good enough to where you can't have her doing nothing offensively. And that's kind of the whole reason Cassidy Rose not as in the rotation as much. Well, it's because Cassidy's a great defender, but she's not giving you a ton of offensive production. The thing with this Kentucky team is that they need Amelia Hassett.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to know, what happened? 29 minutes, doesn't attempt a single shot. And again, we'd have to go back and be like, did she even have open looks? Did she have whatnot? But we know she can create her own shot. We've seen her drive to the hoop on people. We've seen her create separation. But, Katie, 29 minutes, no shots. And the worst part is that after the game, I asked Kenny, I was like, what do you do to get her going again? And word for word, this isn't paraphrasing, this isn't whatever, word for word, Kenny says no clue. He says, we didn't tell her not to shoot. And it's just one of those things what do you make of that, Katie? Because I'm almost dumbfounded by her performance, what Kenny said. What in the world is going on with Amelia Hassett, Katie?
I mean, here's the weird thing. I just like really quickly sifted through her stats and against Texas A&M in at Texas A&M. Um, when Kentucky lost on the road, she also had 0 points. And granted, this time she was 0 of 3 from the field. She attempted 3 shots, which, you love an attempt, but you would rather have a make. I think that in this case, it's almost an anomaly because her not shooting the ball is so weird to me. And like you said, like we would have to go back and watch because I don't know if maybe she didn't have any open looks, but I feel like she's always the one to take the shot. I feel like every time we watch her play, she is the one to take the shot, especially from 3. Besides Georgia, of course, but I just feel like this game is not representative of who she is as a player. I think that truly, like, the whole team was just kind of wishy-washy besides Tiani and Georgia. I don't really know. I don't want to think too much about it because I don't think that this is going to stay a trend. I hope it doesn't stay a trend because you have big games coming up. I don't know if maybe the last game against Oklahoma or Alabama, or no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at stats right now. Against Oklahoma, she only had 5 points. So these past 2 games, she hasn't been performing to what we know she can do. But hopefully, I mean, they had a couple days off, so maybe she can get back into the gym and figure something out. But yeah, I don't think that I'm worried too much. I think that sometimes, I mean, Clara Strack went through a little slump, and look at her now. So
That's true. Yeah, because I mean, you have to think I keep thinking back to that Louisville game where I feel like Amelia Hassett is the reason Kentucky won, and like she was clutch, she came up big, like big rebounds, big free throws, like. We know Amelia has it in her. It's not like she's played poorly since the start of the year, and she's averaging like 3 points a game, and it's like she's from Eastern Florida State College. She can't do it in the SEC. Like we've seen her do it, and I guess sometimes like shooters get mental. Like admittedly I didn't play basketball beyond my like grade school years, so I couldn't tell you fully, but. Like shooters, you get that mental block sometimes where, you kind of just lose confidence in your shot for whatever reason. Maybe they weren't falling in practice. Maybe Kenny said something to her in practice. I have no idea. But, he did say we didn't tell her not to shoot. But it's just one of those things. Like, I don't know. Like, I like your optimism on not being worried. I don't know if I'm worried yet either. Let's see if she has another game like that against Texas. Mm-hmm. But I think Amelia Hassett, like, we need you, girl. Like, we need you to pick it up and keep hitting shots for sure. But Katie, Clara Strack, let's talk about something good from that horrible, horrible game. And I feel so bad for her because this could have been like one of the performances that we talk about, like, for like a very long time, just because of how crazy it was. But Clara Strack, Katie, yes, she scored 13 points. Yes, she got 10 rebounds. Yes, she recorded 3 assists. But Katie, the reason we're talking about Clara Strack is because she set the single-game blocks record at UK. She recorded a program record 8 blocks in that game. Denisha Stallworth had 7 in 2013. Eight blocks, Katie. Like, I remember, what was it? I think it was literally the first game against USC Upstate. And Clara Silva had 6 blocks, and we were like, "Oh, she's gonna be the one who like breaks the all-time blocks record and all of these every record you could break and block, she's gonna do it." But Katie, Clara Strack, I think she's like on pace to have the most blocks in a season. She's averaging almost 3 blocks a game, but just one of those things. Like Clara Strack, man, like how was she only a sophomore, Katie? How was Clara Strack only a sophomore?
I just feel like this goes to show the kind of coach that Kenny Brooks is, because the way that he can develop players in such a short amount of time is so promising for the future, especially with this year's freshman class and next year's freshman class. It's exciting to see how far she has come. Now, that doesn't mean that she didn't do good last year, but she didn't really have the chance to. I mean, she was behind Elizabeth Kitley, and she was one of the best to ever hit the court at Virginia Tech. So, I just think that she has become one of the most well-rounded players I have seen this season so far, if not through the past 2 years that we've been covering this team, and not just this team, but in this sport in general. She is so well-rounded, and she just is very consistent. And like I said earlier, she had a little slump, and that's why I don't feel weird about Amelia Hassett, is because now Clara Strack is breaking records and she's being put on awards watch lists left and right. Like, she has become such a great player, and she's only 19. So very young, and going up against 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds consistently putting up 8 blocks. That's crazy.
The thing with Clara Katie, first of all, she's so good at blocking that she's kind of blocking my face right now. Like Clara Strack, it doesn't matter if it's a basketball or my head, she's blocking everything. But, she's only a sophomore. Is she going to be a top 5 pick in the WNBA draft in 2027? Like, is Clara Strack, is she going to be the best player that ever played here? I mean, that's maybe a bit much to say at this point in her career. But, is Claire, I don't think we understand how good she is. And it's crazy because I feel like I spent so much time raving about Clara Silva, who is, yes, admitted, who has a lot of potential. But I feel like an idiot, Katie, for sitting there looking at Clara Strack and just, not thinking about her as, this huge piece. And again, you see it because, in practice, or at least the 2 open ones we've been to, Kenny spends a lot of time with her. Her and Georgia, I think there's, a criticism where it's well, it's because they were at Virginia Tech and he likes the Tech girls more. But I'm not even going to get into that nonsense. But, Kenny puts a lot of time into Clara Strack, Katie, and I think it's, just kind of sum things up. It's pretty evident in her game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that, especially because since Clara Strack learned from Elizabeth Kitley, probably watching her in practice doing these things and being great, maybe Clara Silva is looking at Clara Strack and is going to do the same thing next year. I mean, can you imagine how crazy Kentucky would be if you have Clara Strack always improving, and then you have Clara Silva developed enough to get consistent minutes, being able to defend 6'5" and 6'7" or however tall they are. I mean, I just can't even wrap my head around it. I think it'd be so fun to watch, and it's kind of what we talked about at the very beginning of the season. We were really excited to see them both play together, but we haven't really been seeing that because obviously Clara Silva is young and she isn't necessarily ready yet. I think that Clara Strack is a great role model. I think that she's doing such a great job at showing not just Clara Silva, but future recruits what a good big is supposed to be. And I think that it shows how good of, how good of a coach Kenny Brooks is, and hopefully encourages people to come to Kentucky, encourages bigs to come to Kentucky because they see what she can do.
That's definitely a good point because, Kenny has a wing commit and a point guard commit. Mm-hmm. And it'll be interesting to see when he gets that first center commit. And to be fair, he's kind of good on centers for a little while. Because, again, sophomore Strack and freshman Silva, he doesn't need – he's not dying for a center. But it is interesting to see, the work he did with Clara Strack. I mean, I think her and, Audie Crooks at Iowa State, who, she hasn't had the best season this year. But last season as a freshman, Audie Crooks was, the surprise player of the year at Iowa State. She was everyone's favorite player at Iowa State. And, her and Clara Strack are the only 2 sophomores that I know of that are on that, center of the year finalist list. Just absolutely, remarkable stuff we're seeing from her.
Mm-hmm.
Katie, want to give a quick shout to our friends at Friends of Cole, of course, sponsoring this episode and many episodes to come. Friends of Cole, Katie, is dedicated to informing and educating Kentucky citizens about the coal industry and its vital role in the state's future. We provide a united voice for an industry that has been and remains a critical economic contributor to Kentucky. By working together, we can provide good jobs and benefits for future generations. Coal is resilient, reliable, and affordable. Friends of Coal is a volunteer organization. All are invited to be a part of our organization, which consists of proud Kentuckians as well as residents from beyond our borders. Head to friendsofcoalkentucky.org to learn more. But Katie, you think about the impact of the Ole Miss loss, and I think the easy thing to do is be you lost, you were top 10 and you lost, But I try to think about what does this mean for the rest of the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at that February to March stretch that we've always talked about, from February 2nd to March 2nd, and you have a slate. You're 1-1, and you have a slate of games that, I said, we said this kind of before the year. If Kentucky can go 500 in that February to March kind of schedule, I think they're good. And right now, I mean, Kentucky, of course, they're 500 at 1-1. But Katie, you look at that stretch, and it's just like, I think Kentucky, you know, I think they can hold their own. Because I think what you have to do now is you kind of have to beat Georgia and Missouri. Like, I know Missouri's a road game, but you have to beat Georgia, you have to beat Missouri, right? Because that puts you at 10-2 in the SEC, and then 21-3 overall. And then you have 4 games that I think you at least have to go 1-3 in between Texas, LSU, South Carolina, Tennessee. You have to find a way to go 1-3, and I really think Kentucky could consider going 2-2 if they can beat LSU at home, because LSU, they struggled on the road, and there's a lot of people who think LSU's maybe a little bit fraudulent. I don't know if they are, but they have struggled, admittedly, against some teams like Kentucky. But Katie, you look at that. I mean, just on our screen, you look at that stretch: Texas, Georgia, Missouri, LSU, Tennessee, South Carolina. Kentucky, again, I think you have to beat Georgia and Missouri, because those are the 2 teams you should beat. But Katie, I think Kentucky needs to go 1-3 in those other games, and that puts you at 22-6, and then 11-5 in the SEC. Katie, I think before the year we all would have taken that, almost pretty certainly.
Yeah, I agree. I remember even saying that I think 22-6 was like the absolute highest record that Kentucky could have, and now this is like what we're hoping for. Like, it's very possible that Kentucky can go 22-6. I think when it comes to the Texas game, with it being at home, I mean, Texas has only lost 2 games, but both of the games that they have lost have been on the road. Now, that's not to say that they haven't won road games, because obviously they have, and they beat Oklahoma on the road. They beat Auburn on the road, but they lost to South Carolina and they lost to Notre Dame. And both of those losses were by double digits. I'm not sure if that even means anything at this point, but I do think that there's a possibility that Kentucky comes out with a win here because they have the home court advantage. And so far, that has served Kentucky really well. I mean, the Louisville game, they beat Louisville because of a great crowd. They beat Alabama because of a great crowd. So I think if we can get a great crowd at the game tomorrow, I do think that Kentucky will come out with a win against Texas, and I feel like that kind of keeps you safe from LSU, Tennessee, South Carolina. Like you said, you got to go 1-3, and if you can win the one here, then there's no pressure for the end of the season. Obviously, you want to win, but you don't have pressure on you at that point.
And, I think I definitely agree with that. Now, Katie, like, you think about the Ole Miss loss, and yes, it's not it's not a bad loss on paper, and here's why. Kentucky, Katie, 4-2 in quad 1 games. Kentucky is sitting at, again, like I said, 4-2 in quad 1. That Auburn game, Auburn is a team, Katie, that Kentucky needs to root for, because Auburn is on that threshold of a quad 3 and quad 2 game, and of course Kentucky beat Auburn at home. So we need Auburn to be a top 80 team in the net, and it's just one of those things like, if you need Auburn to be top 80, because that's the threshold for being a quad 2, and they're sitting at number 80 exactly. Georgia, of course, being the lone quad 3 game, and then I think it's funny, like Arkansas, SEC team, but they're still quad 4. Just goes to show how bad Arkansas is. But you look at that resume, Katie, and it's not the best resume in the world, obviously, but 4-2 in quad 1, especially with the teams you've played. Like, Vanderbilt's a lot better than expected. Illinois is improving. North Carolina, probably the best North Carolina team they've had there in several years. Like, it's not a horrible resume when you look at it, Katie, and that's something that, again, of course, you see at the bottom, Texas is a quad 1 game. Kentucky, that's the good thing about playing in the SEC. There's plenty of opportunities, and even when you do lose, Katie, your losses aren't going to be the worst thing in the world most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. The only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is Texas A&M moving down in the quad rankings, because they lost to Arkansas. They just lost to Texas by 20. They lost to Auburn. They lost to Missouri. They're on a 4-game losing streak, and so I do think that they will probably end up moving down to quad 3. But yeah, I think even if they move down to quad 3, like you said, like we want to be rooting for Auburn to move up to quad 1 because they are on that threshold. So I think it would kind of end up canceling out. But yeah, I mean, the resume is good. I think it's fine. I think that it's better, obviously, than we expected at the beginning of the season. So I'll take it.
Well, Auburn, there's no way. I don't think there's any way Auburn will get to quad 1. It's just a matter of trying to keep them at quad 2 because Auburn have to be a top 25 team in the net, and it's just I don't think they could even like win out and get the top 25. But sitting there at number 80, I don't think that's too bad. But Katie, moving on from Ole Miss and how horrible that was, let's talk about Texas because the good thing about Texas, you know, I've tweeted this earlier today, Katie. The last time Vic Schaefer brought the number 3 team in the country, who had one loss in conference play, into historic Memorial Coliseum. Michaela Epps and Evelyn Actor, 2 seniors on that 2017 team, combined for 49 points on senior night to help Kentucky win in overtime. I'm gonna try to give myself all the good mojo I can heading into this game because Texas is tough. I mean, they literally they just beat South Carolina. And by the way, in case you didn't know, South Carolina had won 57 straight games in the SEC. Like, it's not like, oh, you beat a South Carolina team that's just not as good and blah, blah, blah. No, you beat South Carolina, who had won 57 straight games in the SEC before the game the other day. Like, Texas is for real. Texas is one of the top, 3, 4, 5 teams in the country that can contend for a national title. Like, you want to talk about the standard, Katie? You want to talk about, like, where is Kentucky on this barometer of how good are you really? We'll find out tomorrow when they take on Texas.
Yeah, Texas is very, very good. I think that they probably are the best team in the SEC. I don't think that it's LSU. I think it's Texas. And I am a little bit scared of Texas. I think that they're very physical and they're very dominant in every single game that they've played so far. I think it's really interesting that Texas and Kentucky have only played twice. It's crazy, but I guess because Texas was only in the SEC this year, I mean, this is their first year in the SEC, so that I guess that kind of makes sense, but that's still kind of crazy to me. I'm scared. I don't really know what else to say. I think that it's going to be a fun game to watch. I think Kentucky's going to bring it, but obviously Texas is going to too. So it's a little bit worrying, but I'm trying to be optimistic about it.
Well, I think when you talk about Texas and Vic Schaefer's team, the main person you have to talk about is Madison Booker, who she was preseason SEC Player of the Year. Like she's for real, right? She averages 16.5 points, 6.6 rebounds, and shoots 46.5% from the 3-point line. Like, what on God's name? Now, I don't know if she has quite enough 3-point attempts to count for a whole lot of the national leaders and stuff, but 46.5%. I mean, she was already good, but now she's averaging insane 3-point shooting numbers. Like, Katie, if you're Kenny Brooks, the main person you have to worry about is Madison Booker because against South Carolina, the first time they played awful and they lost by a bunch, and then they played South Carolina again and she went off. Like, if Madison Booker is going to be Madison Booker against Kentucky, it's all but over. Like, you have to find a way to, maybe don't stop her. Again, it's like they used to say about Zion. Like, you can't stop her, but you can limit her. You can slow her down. We've seen it happen. Kenny Brooks, she's really big and physical. Like, she's going to kick Clara Strack's ass, and it's a matter of, Clara, can you kick hers back?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just like Clara, I mean, Madison Booker is a sophomore. And last year, she was the Big 12 Player of the Year, and she was the first freshman to ever do that. So I think it just goes to show the kind of player that she is. She's, like you said, very physical, and she's going to push Clara Strack to her limits. I think that even though there's a 4-inch differential between them, Clara Strack has the height advantage, but not necessarily the size or physicality advantage. I think that Clara Strack can get a little bit mean in the paint, but can she hold up to Madison Booker? I don't know. I guess we'll see. I think she can, but I do think it's going to be difficult.
And then Texas has two forwards in Taylor Jones and Kyla Oldacre, who, first of all, shoot north of 60% from the field. So that just goes to show how efficient they are more than anything. But they both average around 10 points a game, 6, 7 rebounds a game. But Rory Harmon is the other player that I think is worthy of note for Texas because Rory is really, really good. Like, I think she's the most underrated. I don't know if she's the most underrated player overall, but definitely one of the more underrated point guards in the country. I mean, 6.2 assists per game. That's seventh in the country, second in the SEC behind Georgia Amore, mind you. But she averages 10 points per game, 2.4 steals per game, so she's very solid defensively. That's going to be a matchup between Rory and Georgia Amore. Now, I do think Georgia Amore is the better point guard. I think she's the better player. But Katie, it's going to be interesting, like, iron against iron, fire versus it's going to be interesting to see how Georgia does, against this Texas team, but specifically against a very talented point guard in Rory Harmon.
Yeah, I think it's kind of worth it to note that Rory Harmon came off of injury this season, so she only played about 12 games last season. I think that she could probably be better had that not happened and she had that year to develop. But I do think that Georgia Amore is the better point guard in this situation. So not too worried about her, but yes, she is very talented. And she's very good at finding the open shot and not shooting it herself, but giving it to her teammates. She's very selfless. And so I think that might be something that Kentucky needs to kind of put an emphasis on is perimeter defense and just making sure that they're covering all of the open shooters on the outside.
And, I want to say this about Texas. Stephen, if you're out there, put it back on me because I want people to see my face when I tell them this. I want people to hear me say it, and I want them, again, to see my face when I say it. Go to the Texas game. How is the game not sold out yet? That's what I want to know. Texas is the number 3 team in the country. Texas is, again, led by a terrific coach, has terrific players. This is everything you could want in a big-time game. BBN, you're great. You've been great. How is this one not sold out yet? What are we doing? What are we doing, BBN? Like, I'm not going to tell fans how to fan, but there's got to be fans in the arena. And I think the wording from UK was that there's only a couple hundred tickets left. That's way too many tickets left. Go to the game. I get it's a weekday. We don't have this problem on men's basketball. Every home game for the rest of the year is sold out in men's basketball, and that includes Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Katie, we have to find a way to put butts in seats because the Texas game, if Kentucky's going to win, it's got to be a packed house. It's got to be a loud house. And no, Larry, tomorrow's game is not a sellout. At least hasn't been announced by UK. I'll go look at tickets. I'll let you explain your side of it, Katie, but you got to find a way to have this game. Like, it needs to be sold out, and if it's not sold out, it definitely needs to be loud, Katie.
Yo, what is so crazy to me, I'm looking at tickets right now, is the cheapest ticket is $12. Like, you're telling me you don't want to spend $12 to watch a great game between two great teams, because I would do that. Granted, I live in Lexington, so the travel probably makes a difference, but let me just say, it's going to be a good game. It's not going to be I don't want to jinx it. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I don't want it to be a blowout. I want it to be close. And I think it will be close. And it'll be a fun game to watch. And Kentucky needs your help. They need your support. I mean, the Louisville crowd was so fun. And this is SEC play, so every game is a rivalry. I don't know. I think that there's too many tickets left.
Now, it does go to show, the Georgia game is sold out already. And it does go to show, it's a lot easier for people to get up here for weekend games, and I get it. But this is a top 10 matchup. It's not like last year where you had number 1 South Carolina come in and you're just going to get your butt kicked because you were horrible and there were 500 fans sitting in the seats at Rupp Arena. No, this is a top 10 game. Kentucky, you all can get mad at me if it doesn't happen. This is going to be a 5-point game with 3 minutes to go. All right? This is going to be a really good game. And again, it's not like I'm sitting here, I guess I am, but, I'm not begging y'all to go. Y'all, this is a really good game that Kentucky, they're going to be in the mix of winning. And again, if that doesn't happen, if Kentucky gets beat by, 25 points, yell at me in the comments, DM me, do everything you all want to do. But this is going to be a really good game. I'm excited for it. There's some national folks coming in, per usual, with all these big Kentucky games. But Katie, Kentucky, Texas, Vic Schaefer, Kenny Brooks, it's the matchup, top 10 matchup in historic Memorial Coliseum. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the Ticketmaster right now to see how many tickets are left. Honestly, it really doesn't look like that many. And the reserve seats in center court, you can get 4 tickets in a group together if, maybe you want to get the whole family involved. I think this would make a really fun Thursday outing, and let the kids skip school on Friday. So
exactly. Who needs to go to school on a Friday?
Maybe I'm going to tell my parents to go and bring my little brother. He loves to skip school anyway. So, I just truly think that support goes such a long way. And the atmosphere in Memorial, it's a brand new Memorial Coliseum, and it's a top 10 matchup. It's going to be so fun, I hope. I don't know what else to say. I just hope that people show up.
It definitely should be fun. In all seriousness, it should be a fun game. It should be a good game more than anything. And BBN, they're going to need your support. Be there, be loud, do your thing. You've been great all year. Continue to be great against Texas. But, Katie, let's go ahead and talk about a game that is sold out, right? Because we were just talking about it. Georgia. Of course, Georgia, again, like I said, it goes to show, Sunday games are going to do better just because they're weekend games. But Georgia, not the best team in the world at all, Katie. Sitting pretty at 10-15 and 2-9 in the SEC. Georgia's just not great. Of course, Kentucky beat them 78-64 on the road earlier in the season. Now that game's at home. It's not a lot to say about Georgia, man. That was the game where Kentucky got up 23-4 to end the first quarter and kind of coasted to a win. I don't want to see Kentucky coasting. There's thing number one. But Katie, I don't know. I guess it's contradictory of me to say don't coast, but then just win the damn game. Don't lose to Georgia and don't lose to Missouri on the road. Win the games you need to win, Katie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at stats from the last time that Kentucky-Georgia played, and who were the top performers. It was Claire Strack and Georgia Amore with 25 and 25 points each. I think rebounding was great, 39 total rebounds to Georgia's 33, so not the biggest differential, but, you still out-rebounded the team. And then 16 assists compared to Georgia's 10, so you're obviously moving the ball a little bit better. The number that really is a little scary is the 16 turnovers. I think we talked about this for sure because this was a game that Georgia Amore had 7 turnovers, but we kind of just attribute that to her being the ball handler. So obviously she's going to have more turnovers than the other players because they're not holding the ball as much. I think obviously Kentucky can probably come out with a win. The game is at home, so there should be no trouble there. But yeah, I don't want to just coast to a win. I want to absolutely destroy them. But yeah, we'll see.
Also, I just want to point out there's a guy named Nobody in our comments. He said, I'm feeling premiere vibes since Steven is in the chat. All good. I'll just hit the like. We're not in premiere mode. This is live. If you're still here, Steven, first of all, thank you for liking the video. But we're here. We're live. We wanted to be able to engage with you all a little bit, and so we figured, let's try moving these live. We did 7:45 because we were like, is the Kenny Brooks show going to be on? Is it not going to be on? It wasn't on tonight. I don't know if it's going to be on forever. There you go. You two going to be big. Respect. There you go. We're going to be big. Thank you, Nobody. The thing, Nobody, is that you're a somebody, and that's all that matters. That's all that matters in our heart. Mm-hmm. But, Katie, talking about some of the Georgia players that Kentucky needs to look out for. The main one who had a really good game against Kentucky, Damari Flournoy, in that last game against Kentucky, Katie, she had, I think it was 19 points. Struggling to find it all of a sudden. It just disappeared off my screen. Yeah, 19 points in that loss, 7-17 from the field. But I think the other thing to note about her, Katie, she had, again, 19 points, but she had 2 steals. So she's good. She can handle herself on the defense. But 41.3% from 3-point range is what she averages, Katie. She can shoot the ball.
Yeah. She's definitely very good. I would say she probably is the best player on the team. When they played the last time, she scored 19 points on 7 of 17 from the field, 4 of 9 from 3, with 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals. So she's definitely the player that I think Kentucky really needs to look out for, but of course she is not the only one.
And then Trinity Turner, she also had 19 in that last game, averaging about 11.9 points, 4.2 rebounds, and 2.9 assists. She's another one. Like I think this is, of course, Kentucky. They only have one team that they play twice now. It's one of those things like you kind of just look at what you did last game, and I feel like you go off of that a lot. And I think if you're Kenny Brook, like those two, Flournoy and Turner, like just try to guard them. And again, you only allowed 64 total points in that game, so I guess it's not even like you played, like it's not even that bad. But I think okay, let's try to zero on them a little bit more because they produced a bit too much for our liking.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you want to make sure that they don't get 20 points again. But at the same time, I mean, we can look at Mia Woolfolk and Asia Abinger. They're averaging 11 points and 10 points apiece. Well, Mia Woolfolk only had 2 points against Kentucky last time. So obviously our forwards did something right to guard her. And then Asia Abinger only had 8, which of course is not that far off from her average. But to be honest, in my opinion, I feel like as long as you can keep Trinity Turner and Damari Flournoy from going off for like 30 points, then really you don't need to change the game plan because you held the rest of the team to below 10 points apiece. I mean, Asia Abinger was the next highest scorer with 8 points. So I feel like as long as you can kind of get something like that going again, I don't think that there's going to be any kind of issue. But of course, you don't want the best players to go off for, 30, 40 points.
Especially in front of a sold-out crowd in Memorial. Like, Kentucky, it just feels like you should be able to handle business. And you should be able to, go win this game. Because that sets you up with a date against Missouri, another one you should win, and then, Katie, you have 3 games to end the season. Tennessee, LSU, and South Carolina. Let's just see what you do. But, and yeah, there you go. Like, again, Texas game, are you going to win or are you going to lose? I mean, you're probably going to lose just if you, look at on paper. So you really need to win those 2. But, again, that Georgia game and that Missouri game, 2 games need to win. Last 3 games, we'll see what happens. But, Katie, of course, first is Texas, then Georgia. Hopefully next time we come back on this podcast, Katie, Kentucky is 2-0 in that stretch. And all of a sudden, we're like, how good is this team really? And, what can we do? But, of course, I think we're going to go ahead and call it an episode here. It's been a good one. Been a nice, lengthy one. Kentucky, again, they dropped one to Ole Miss, but the good thing about losing games in the SEC, Katie, is that you can immediately make up for them and have really good games like this one against Texas. Like I said, be there, be loud, support, like, comment, subscribe on this video. We're almost at 45,000, as you can see. Give our guy Steven his props for what he's done with this KSR YouTube channel, kind of really building it up from basically nothing. Go ahead. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those things. Thank you to that nobody who liked our post already. Again, nobody, you're somebody. All right, you mean a lot to us for being on here and listening. But Katie, do you have any final words before we get out of here?
I'm really getting excited for the game tomorrow. I don't know about you, but I like to be optimistic, so I'm going to go in with a good attitude. Hopefully, come out with a good attitude. I guess we'll talk about it next week.
And then just real quick before we go, because I always seem to forget to do this, give me your winner and MVP.
Oh, shoot. Okay, well,
if your winner's Texas,
I said I want to be optimistic, so I'm going to say my winner is Kentucky, but I truly don't know if I can choose. I think that tomorrow is going to be a big game for Georgia. If that's cliche, I don't care. I think that she will probably be the one to go off, if anybody does, or Deja. One of the 2.
Katie, this wouldn't be the Memorial Memo if I wasn't way too optimistic. Kentucky's not only going to beat Texas, they're going to... No, I'm just kidding. They'll beat Texas. They're not going to beat them by 30. But Kentucky, I think they're... I don't know why, I feel good. And probably it's because I remember that Vic Schaefer sucks in Memorial Coliseum. Like he's like 1-4 in Memorial Coliseum and 5-7 against Kentucky overall. I feel good about the game. Maybe I shouldn't. But I'm taking Amelia Hassett in a bounce back game. She's going to have 15 points, 10 rebounds, help lead Kentucky to a win. But like I said, we're going to call it here. Of course, you have me, Phoenix Stevens, alongside Miss Katie Hutchinson. Thank you all for tuning in. We will see you all next time.